Information Officer for Thomson Hospital Kota Damansara, and Dr. Terence Tan, who is the Healthcare Life Sciences Lead at the Venture Capital and Startup for Asia Pacific and Japan Amazon Web Services. So let's give a round of applause to our two speakers today.
Social distance.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right, thanks, my dude. Okay, good morning, everyone. So, we thought of making it a bit more interactive. So, I'll be doing the asking the question part. He'll be doing the answering part. Because I think 40 minutes is not a very long time. So, we should give Amazon AWS enough.
Oh, did it?
They want me to stop talking.
I think so. Me too.
Yeah, sure.
It's okay. Actually, can you hear me at the back? You can hear me? Oh, it's okay. Then my big fat mouth can open it. So I can hear.
No, it's fine.
It's okay.
It's fine.
I think if they can hear, it's good enough.
Right. So let's get started. From firstly, thank you so much for coming down all the way from Singapore. Right. I think it's good for us to get to know Dr. Terence better, from Dr. Terence's point of view as well as Amazon point of view. Maybe you want to introduce yourself. And,
Sure.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for having me, everybody. My name is Terence. I head up the Healthcare Life Science Startups Business Development for Asia, Pacific, and Japan for AWS. Sorry, it's very long, but long and the short of it, my mandate is twofold: to help to nurture the ecosystems in this region, as well as to help the startups to succeed on AWS. And I like to say that there are three levers we do with that we use for that. The first is technology, which we'll definitely be talking a little bit about. Second is with talent enablement, whether that's business or with technology. And the third is with business support, whether that is making the right connections with regards to go-to-market, or whether that is capital raising, or whether that is that informal advisory. And this is spread out all throughout the regions that we are operating in. A very brief background about myself. So I'm an immunologist and primary care physician by training. I trained in the NHS in England, worked there for a few years, moved back to Singapore, where I did public practice, private practice, NGO, was at Ministry of Health for a little while, done administration. About 7 years ago, I got involved in clinical AI. So first with Babylon Health. So some of you may know Babylon Health for exactly the wrong reasons, because they went bust. But I left them quite early on because I joined a late stage Japanese startup called Yubi, which is also in clinical AI. Yubi now, they're post Series C and they're expanding to the US. I think got millions of users now. So that's a little bit about me. Maybe I can get a quick show of hands. Who is aware of AWS? Just a quick one? Yep. Oh, sorry. Just stealing your thunder, man. Okay. And who's sort of a bit familiar with cloud services? A little bit, maybe? Okay. So just a little brief bit. So AWS is Amazon Web Services. It's the cloud services division of Amazon. So its own sort of division, but still falls under Amazon. And the cloud basically refers to the on-demand delivery of IT services or IT resources via the internet on a pay-as-you-go basis. So what we like to say is, instead of buying and maintaining your physical servers and your data centers, what you can do is you can use cloud services on an on-need basis to access computing power, storage, databases. And I know G's going to ask this, so I might as well save the time. So AWS in healthcare, right? So what's an infrastructure partner got to do in healthcare? We like to say that we hope to be a trusted technology and innovation partner with providing a reliable, secure services And to that realm, I'll throw some numbers out. My memory for numbers is extremely bad, but we have over 1,000 global compliance requirements that's validated by third parties. We host 90 over open healthcare, genomics, and life sciences data, and we operate in 33 regions, soon Malaysia, so hopefully 34 by the end of the year, hopefully. 33 regions around the world. We have purpose-built health services and solutions to help to improve operations and clinical efficiency. I'll give you an example of that maybe, if that's okay. So we have a service in the US called HealthScribe. And I'm sure everybody's been reading on the news about these ambient AI health scribes where it records the audio, transcribes it from audio to text, and then generates a summary for the physician. And because at AWS we have a lot of experts in the intersection between health and technology with dedicated teams, we've done some thinking around this. And one of the things that HealthScribe has is that it is evidential. So when it generates a summary, you can click on the item in the summary and it will bring you to the part of the transcript where it gathered that evidence from. Example, patient presents with chest pain. Presenting complaint, chest pain. If you click on chest pain, it will bring you to the portion of the transcript where the patient says, oh, I've got a pain in my chest, and it's left-sided, etc. So we've done a lot of thinking around this. In fact, the average number of experience years for an AWS health leader is 18 years. And I just about hit that because I qualified in 2005.
Thank you so much. It's a very long answer, but anyway, thank you. Now, I noticed that just now when we asked who's familiar with AWS and cloud, only a few hands went up.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to explain, right, what the role of cloud technology and Amazon AWS in its place in healthcare. So think of me, for example. I run hospitals. I'm a chief information officer of hospitals in Malaysia. So what difference would it make for me whether I've got my servers on the cloud or on-prem? What extra services do I get? You know, basics, right?
Right.
You know, from AWS. What is it that AWS is trying to do differently than others? Could you please?
Sure. So I think we'll start at the beginning naturally of your physical service, your physical infrastructure versus cloud infrastructure. So one of the problems with physical infrastructure is it needs a lot of upkeep and maintenance. Your servers at the right temperature, are they maintained correctly? With cloud services, you don't need to worry about that. So in effect, for the business minded, it transforms your CAPEX, your capital expenses, into operating expenses. The second thing is when you have, particularly with computing power within storage, how do you provision with a fixed physical server? So you know that you have peak usage and trough usage. So naturally, midnight, you're not going to use so much computing power or storage. Daytime, probably much more as your clinicians, as people access services, they're running CT scans, etc. So do you provision for peak and then have a lot of excess capacity and you pay for it already, it's not utilized, you're not sweating that asset? Or do you then provision for trough, but then you know when it hits peak, you're going to run into problems, latency problems, you can't run your workloads, etc. So because cloud is elastic, it is pay as you go. So in effect, it can scale up almost infinitely, almost infinitely, within reason, and then scale down, and you only pay for what you use. So that's on the basics, right? Now, with regards to healthcare, I think healthcare is, in my mind as a physician, healthcare is predominantly a data problem, in my opinion. And I know some of you may disagree, and I'm very happy to spar with you on that, but healthcare is a data problem. Now, some very quick statistics. It's estimated the average health system in the US generates 5 petabytes of data every year. And because of data sovereignty, data retention laws, you're having to keep that for 7 years, if not indefinitely, in some jurisdictions. So you know that's only going to keep growing. Plus, in terms of volume, it's estimated that healthcare data takes up about 30% of data globally. Not my research. I'm happy to provide the reference for those estimates, but that's what some folks have suggested, and that means that you have a lot of data. Now, you can argue data may not be usable because it may not be structured, because if you've ever read my handwriting, you'll know it's classic doctor's handwriting, so I like to joke it's encrypted at source, but it's not structured, right? It's very hard to use this for data analysis, for training models. So you have an ingestion issue. So if you look at the infrastructure, you've got storage, you have computing, but you deal with data. So we have tools to help you ingest the data, that is, take in the data and standardize it. We also have tools to help with the analysis of it. So, and I kind of don't want to keep throwing out AWS names, but suffice to say, suffice to say, we have a range of services such as, let's say, Lex, which is the voice recognition service. We have SageMaker, which is our AI machine learning services as well, that can help folks to spin up very quickly models and train them. We have things like Bedrock, which is our generative AI offering. And interestingly, we were supposed to get onto Gen AI, but super quickly, who is familiar with generative AI here? You get a bit of show of hands. And super quickly, which ones have you played on? Have you used?
Llama, we got Llama, you got
Llama.
Chat GTP, the new one.
So
yeah.
OpenAI?
Yeah.
OpenAI as well?
Yeah, same.
OpenAI. So on those models, what happens is data flows to the model and then flows back to you, or some of these other third-party providers. In Bedrock, it's actually self-contained. So the team have done a lot of thinking around this, a lot of deep thinking, which means the upshot of it is, functionally, if you deploy whatever model on Bedrock, Bedrock itself is HIPAA eligible and GDPR compliant out of the box, which is security, which is a nice segue to say we also have a lot of tools to help you maintain and continue to be as secure as possible.
That's nice. Now, so it's actually suffice to say that AWS provides many services, and you gently touched on AI just now. So I clearly can say that as a hospital, I can run applications, but it's impossible for me to run AI services in-house, 100%. So I end up, or rather I should be using services like from AWS. So let's focus a bit in terms of AI, right? What do you think is the role of AI when it comes to cancer treatment? It's a very big question. It's a very, very big question.
Yeah.
You can start from explaining like what the efforts AWS has been putting so far, what's the strategy, what's the roadmap, what's the direction, and so on. Would you please?
Sure, thanks. So I think one of the things is AWS doesn't tend to lead a lot of these efforts. We are more of a partner to folks who do lead these efforts. Let me give you some examples and lay out a little bit of structure around the answer. So AI is best thought of as a technology, right? So in effect, if you change a question to another technology, one might ask, how is the internet changing cancer treatment? So if we think along those lines, right at the start, if we're looking at drug development, shall we say, okay? And so for drug development, AI is in the midst of transforming drug development. We have a lot of companies that are using AI to help with novel therapeutic discovery, and that's determined, and that's really, really determined, these folks, very innovative folks, are determined to shorten the time to market for new and novel therapies. An example of this, one of our partners, AstraZeneca, basically has used AWS to transform its R&D department so that it can discover, launch new novel therapies faster. They can get it to market faster, get it to patients faster. So that's the very brief kind of encapsulation of the pre-patient sort of space, life sciences space. Then you have the patient space, and there's a few buckets along here that I just like to cover, if that's okay. So the first would be detection. So early detection and screening. And AI plays a role in many of these modalities, but most of them are in the radiology or pathology space. So the one reference that I usually say, because it is a Malaysia reference, so I really like this, is AWS is collaborating with Ramsey Sime Darby and Analyse.ai to release AI tools. Now, Analyse AI is an Australian company, and they focus on AI radiological solutions. So with their solution, they help clinicians to detect up to just over 120 suspected conditions on a chest X-ray, and one of those is lung cancer. So you have a lot of services around the improved and more rapid detection of cancers, and that's just an example in radiology. You then have the next piece of, hey, remember I said healthcare I view as a data problem, because your oncologists will not just use an X-ray to diagnose cancer, correct? I mean, this is common knowledge. You need clinical information, you probably need pathology or cytology at some point in time. There may be genomic testing, right? Because now there's companion diagnostics to help personalize the treatment, which we'll get onto. But all of this is multimodality, because you need to integrate your data from your PACS system, which is your imaging, to your lab system, which is LIS.
EMR.
Yeah, all the acronyms that you can think of, and they need to come together so that your clinicians can review all the data, potentially have a tool to help them review all the data, so that they can make a better decision. Do we want to opt for a surgery, or do we want to opt for pre-surgical chemo or radiotherapy to shrink cancer so that it's easier to cut out? Right. Subsequently will be more better treatments. So we've developed the treatments, we're now detecting cancers, we're sort of making better decisions through data, and then we're starting to get into the realm of a much more personalized care for cancer. And this, again, is a data problem, because you need to ingest a lot of data to understand the unique characteristics of the patient, so that you can choose the right treatment at the right time. And there are a few examples of this. Let's say, I know Guardant Health has DNA, using DNA sequencing because of the circulating tumor DNA that you can get from the blood draw, and that can help to detect the cancers. There's Grail. Grail is also an AWS user that can detect over 50 cancers, again, with blood draws. But now that you've sort of decided on the treatment, after the treatment, in the post-treatment space, you now have tools that can help with monitoring, right? And I like to joke, what is the classic telemedicine tool? Classic telemedicine tool is your phone, right? In the old days, you might pick up the phone, your cancer nurses might pick up the phone to say, hey, you've gone home after your chemotherapy or your radiotherapy, how are you? Are you vomiting? Are you drinking enough? How are you feeling? Now, that can be done with video, so you have much more of a personal one-on-one. Well, it's still one-on-one, but more personal. You probably be able to gather much more data, because you're actually seeing somebody's face, right? Do they look ill? Do they look like they're nauseated, etc. Okay, and there are also tools that can help with monitoring. So standardized questionnaires that can be used, and that can be digitized, that can be sent via an app or via a web application to the patient.
Nice, excellent. So, one of my thought as being in the professionals in the healthcare world is that the very model of hospital will change in the future. Like if I ask you guys, right, how do you spell hospital? The actual spelling, the English spelling. How would you spell hospital? H-O-S-P-I-T-A-L. I say that's wrong. Because in the future, the very walls which makes up hospitals will actually break down and enter our home. So I like to spell hospital as H-O-U-S-E-P-I-T-A-L, because very similar to how during COVID-19, the school broke its walls and entered our home to give education to our children. Hospitals will also have to break its walls. They have to, it has to be done, right? Because the very business model of hospital is not sustainable. Shortage of labor, ever increasing expenses, cost of treatment, drugs, insurance, and aging population. Population which actually requires the care, but they are not sick enough to be in the hospital. So there's only one way, is to deliver these treatments to the home, to the houses, right? So, and I like the way you coined the term just now that healthcare is a data problem. And but I see it's beyond that as well, because cloud also enables us to deliver the healthcare services beyond hospital to the home. So how would you say Amazon or AWS strategies are in terms of patient remote monitoring, patient remote care, and so on?
Right. So, thank you for that. And in some ways, because I hedge my statement a little bit carefully, because it's data, right?
But data's everywhere.
Correct. That's why.
Yeah.
Cunning. But if you look at the hospital at home model, by and large, and this is my argument, is that it's still a data problem, because you must first identify the right patients for the hospital at home plan, right?
It doesn't apply to everyone.
It doesn't apply to everybody, and
Sure.
I'll give you an example. Somebody with an appendicitis, of course they cannot be cared for at home. Okay. But on the other hand, if it is like we saw in COVID, you have COVID but it's fairly mild, there's no reason why really you need to be in hospital. So that's the first thing for data. So you need the right data so you can make the right decision, so you choose the right patient. The worst thing is you choose the wrong, you choose somebody who's too sick to go home. Then the second one is there's a data flow issue. So there's data flow, because data needs to flow from hospital or professionals to the patient, and then from the patient back to the professionals. Okay. So we provide the infrastructure to help with this, and whether that is with the video call tools, like I mentioned, we have Amazon Chime. We have the necessary infrastructure to build the applications to help with the interaction. Now, previously what I've said, and I'll take off my AWS hat now, so the usual disclaimers apply. Okay, this personal, okay, is all this. Better follow. Okay. So if you think of AWS a little bit like Lego, okay? So we have all the bricks with 200 over services, and you can build it in many different ways, right? You can build, like Lego, I know you can build Shah Alam Stadium, or you can build, I come from Singapore, so Merlion, okay? Or if you're a football fan, one of the football stadiums, Old Trafford, for example. And there are instructions for that, so we have reference architectures you can build like that. But we understand that not everybody has an internal team who can build with them. So we do have partners, and we have pro services, the white glove services, and AWS to help you build. So we do have some very dedicated healthcare services. I mentioned HealthScribe. There's also Health Lake as well, which I'll talk about later. But by and large, the end-to-end application development is usually done by the customer or a partner on behalf of that customer. But we have the infrastructure, have all the services to help you achieve that. And one example that I like to give is particularly over COVID. So Care Monitor in Australia, I think I got the name right, I'll check it out. But Care Monitor in Australia, within 1 week, they managed to bring up an entire remote patient monitoring workflow in collaboration with the Western Sydney Health Authority. Let me make sure that I get that right, because that one is very, very important. I don't want to misquote on that. So that's the Western Sydney Primary Health Network and the local health district. So that was to help over COVID. It's very impressive. They used AWS services, and they got that entire workflow up running in 1 week, which is very impressive. Naturally, I'm going to say a lot of kudos to them. Obviously, it's not all AWS. It cannot be all AWS, but we were helping them. We were accelerating their development. I think that the response times are very important. The durability and reliability is very important. So we always like to say this 5 nines, 99.999% uptime, right, with our data centers. It's secure, so data center security is very, very strong. I can't get into data center, regular testing of security for data centers. And we also provide a lot of advice around, look, privacy and security are going to be one of the big concerns. Okay, like everybody will be concerned about it, and naturally there's a bit of philosophy around it. It's a question of when, not if, and mitigating factors, what is practical, what is not practical. And there's lots and lots of ways that we can help with that. We have services that actually monitor your setup. So is your identity management set up correctly? Are your services being used correctly? All of these things, that is the well-architectured infrastructure, will go a long way towards helping with the hospital at home. Secure, reliable, and accelerate.
Excellent, excellent. So now that we have gone from the hospital to the patient's home, so that's your provider and your patient covered, right? So the thing about healthcare is we have a lot more entities at play within the healthcare ecosystem. So we got the provider, we got the patient, we've got the payer, which is the insurance market, we got the physicians out there, and we got the policymakers as well. So these are the basic foundation which makes up healthcare ecosystem. So coming back to the cloud, how would you say that cloud plays the technology in terms of making this work together, in terms of data sharing, and how does it benefit the healthcare ecosystem at the end?
So we all know that there are various pieces of regulation that are involved in healthcare data, because healthcare data is it's both private, very intimate, and can be used for the wrong means as well as for very good outcomes. Right? And we know internally, I think most people understand that data sharing is in many ways going to be necessary for care, right? My oncologist definitely needs to share my data with the pharmacist, for example, so they give me the right drugs. Just a simple example, okay? That gets much more complicated when it goes from one system to another system. So if it goes from one hospital to another hospital. So the first piece is interoperability. That is, is that data, when it's exchanged, is it still readable? Can they still use it? Okay. Example of this: patient comes from China, everything in Chinese. I'm like, I cannot read. Right? That's a simple example, and the fix may be quite simple. You can use an auto translator or get a translator. But when it comes to zeros and ones, if the format is not the same, or if the structure is not the same, it can go a bit funny. You know, like if you've ever forwarded yourself an invite using Outlook to your Gmail, you know, there are a lot of tags at the end, right? So that's going to be an issue. There are standards around. There's FHIR standard, FH7, and if any of you go to HIMSS, that's one of the big topics. And I think we've made a lot of strides, so we can help. We do work with a lot of customers to help them to be interoperable. That's the first thing. Then the second thing is when you talk about interoperability with security, which I've touched upon already. Then finally, you have, other than clinical use cases, I think most people would be happy for their data to be used for research so that it benefits others and perhaps myself in the future. But healthcare data is notoriously difficult to anonymize. I'll give you an example, okay? Most of the time, people talk about PII, personally identifiable information, and that usually is your contact information, your name, your exact date of birth, passport number, contact number.
18 fields, right? 18 fields as per.
18 fields, yeah, as per HIPAA. But you can strip all of that out, and you can still identify somebody.
Yes.
I give you an example, okay? If you have a fairly rare condition, if one has a fairly rare condition, let's say this 42-year-old dude in the US has Ebola, you cannot strip the data out, because you strip out that data, there's no data for you to use, right? It doesn't make sense for you to strip out that data. But just from the fact that he's 42-year-old male with Ebola, I already know who he is, because it's reported, right? Because there's a case report. So that's why it's actually really, really, really quite difficult to have truly anonymized healthcare data. It's actually really difficult. To this end, especially for research, especially for training of, let's say, AI models, etc., there's a couple of concepts that we have. We have the federated learning concept, which is essentially where the data is being used to train the models or to run the models on, and only the outputs can be seen by a centralized system. So the centralized system never sees the data, so you can argue it's still anonymized, right? I mean, I'm only taking the insights, the kind of the outputs out. I'm not looking at the actual data. Similar concept, it's a bit more complicated than that, but similar concept for something that we call the data clean room, where third parties can come in, run their workloads on the data without actually physically, without being able to access to see the data, but to be able to extract some insights out from that, aggregated insights out from that. The last piece, I think is quite timely because we got the 10-minute warning already.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry.
My voice is a bit hypnotic at times and can put people to sleep. But the last one is generative AI and synthetic data, right?
Okay.
So,
Okay, let me just add on to that a bit. The communication between the entities within healthcare ecosystem is extremely important. Let me just quickly give an example. If you recently or in the past many years admitted anyone to a hospital, you would have taken few hours, especially if you are insured patient using insurance. If you are discharging someone, again takes about few hours. Why is that the case? Why can't you walk into a hospital like a hotel, get your keys, and check out like hotel as well? So one of the key issue is actually the communication or the data sharing between a provider and a payer, right? Shouldn't be this difficult, but it's still a very time-consuming process, actually, right? So again, I see some students in the audience. So the future of hospital is not within the hospital, and the future of healthcare IT, right, is not within the hospital. It's actually outside the hospital, right? With that, let me just ask another question. Okay, if you draw a graph of technology adoption in various industries, you got telcos taking up, don't laugh yet, telcos taking up extremely high, high tech and so on. Banking, so needless to say, if you are a CIMB ATM card holder in Malaysia, you can go to London or Singapore, take out your money from a different bank altogether. But if you belong to the same franchise of hospital, maybe the hospital is in KL. For 20 years you are the patient of the hospital, but suddenly you go to Cheras or Klang, the other branch of the same franchise hospital will not recognize you. They do not have the medical records. That's how archaic and outdated healthcare technology is even today. And I don't see the light yet at the end of the tunnel. Okay? So, having said this, right, why and where do we go from here? What are the challenges? How do we solve this? A huge question again.
Okay, so maybe to partially answer that, I like audience participation because they do the work, I don't do the work.
Okay.
So, can anybody share what they think is the number one communication and interoperability tool, that is data exchange tool, in the US? So, I would argue the US is possibly not the most technologically advanced healthcare system, but quite okay, reasonably so. What do you think is the number one tool? Okay, hands up for dedicated IT system. You know, like Epic or Cerner. Anybody?
They wouldn't know.
Oh no, they wouldn't know. Okay, never mind. Okay, how about email? Who thinks email is the number one tool?
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Just now you said the hospital. If let's say I go to Pantai Bangsa and Pantai Choras, my data is not in same hospital.
My
okay?
hospital as well. Yeah.
Why don't you centralize your data?
Okay. Firstly, I don't
So-
belong to Pantai.
Example, okay? I'm using it as an example.
Yes.
It's centralized. I mean, I
Yeah.
can go to Thomson, different branches.
Ah.
Okay? Why is your data not centralized?
Okay.
I just show my IC, you should be able to pick up my record, right?
Right. Let me introduce myself to you. I spent, this is my 25th year working. I spent the first 5 years of my life working for Motorola, communication line company. And my first project, I don't know whether I can mention the name. I'll say it anyway. My first project was Columbia Asia. So Columbia Asia is not just a Malaysian hospital. They are a regional hospital group. They are in Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, and India. So our first project with Columbia Asia is how to share data among these 4 countries within these hospitals, because we had MNC clients like Samsung. They had engineers who travel abroad and around. They had to share their medical records. So I'm proud to say that that's what we did back then in Columbia Asia. After that, I left the private sector industry, hospital industry. I went to government, GLCs, went around other countries and so on, and most recently in Qatar. And now that I'm in Thomson, that's exactly what I'm doing. I think it is a crime when you don't allow data sharing. It's also a crime when you don't provide the data, patients' own data back to patients. Many hospitals do not have such policy or even technology in place. So to answer in short, wherever I go is what I do actually. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the bank
Can
has
I-
this kind of.
Can I answer that from I take off AWS hat again, okay? So please, this is totally personal views. For a long time, the main instrument of the medical history is from the patient. So some medical providers, I mean, I trained in the late 90s, right? Even then, some of them say, no, the patient should know what, it's their own condition. But we know that doesn't apply, right? You may be unconscious, okay, there may be certain circumstances. So that's number one. Number two is the fact that it's not that the health information or health data is so vastly valuable that people want to keep it. It's because there's retention laws and security laws. So there's a security breach. It's very serious. You get in a lot of trouble. Confidentiality breach. So what do? They make sure that it's very secure. So I was asking a bit of a question around this email. Actually, the number one interoperability tool and communication tool in the US is the fax machine. Still the fax machine. And I asked a few people why. They said, you know why? Because number one, I already got the infrastructure. I don't need to pay extra. I don't need to rework my back end. And some more, it's very secure. What? I got the number correct. It goes over what? Nobody can say somebody, very hard to intercept, that kind of thing. So when you understand a little bit around the concerns of data sharing, you can understand a little bit. I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying it's right. I think it's absolutely wrong. And I agree with you that it's absolutely wrong. But now you get a bit of a glimpse as to why there's so many barriers. And at the end of the day, as a business, obviously if it's within one healthcare system, right? Okay, left hand to right hand business. But if it's outside, then why do I need to invest in all this infrastructure, all these systems, to give my revenue, in inverted commas, for my revenue to exit my business. So, but there are, I'll give you examples where now it's mandated, right? So you think about particularly Europe and the US, the patient information usually must be provided to the patient on request in a reasonable time with a reasonable cost. Might be a very small admin cost, okay? But I just like to introduce a bit of a concept here. There is actually a difference between health data and health information. Legally it's not been clear, but when we consider it, there's actually a differentiation. The data is the raw data. It is, I'll give you an example, X-ray is the X-ray film. That's healthcare data, and it's very hard to assign ownership of that, okay? Because I'll give you an example. If I write down how somebody looks is publicly observable, is that your data or is it somebody else's data because they have observed it, right? They have observed the patient. Or family history. Is it your data? No, it's also actually technically your family's data. So there's health data, which is sort of the bare bones of the patient, right? So the X-ray film, the actual information. Health information is actually the analysis and derivative of that. So using the X-ray example, X-ray is the data, health information is actually the report of that. And the report of that falls, the ownership usually falls under the person that created it, because I did this, and in common copyright law, I have substantially changed it, done analysis so that it's now unique, and therefore it's owned by me. Now, because I'm doing on behalf of the patient, of course the patient has a right to it, but that data itself must be retained. That information, health information, must be retained by the hospital, by law, and they have to make sure that it's secure and that that confidentiality is not breached. So, just very quickly, data and information, but the two can merge together because very important. You don't want it out there, right? I mean, nobody wants their health information spread around.
I think we got to conclude soon, but just one last sentence when it comes to data sharing, right? And this is an actual Malaysian situation right now. So in 1997, there was a law passed called the 1997 DSA, Digital Signature Act, and this act enables physicians to sign data digitally using their digital signature. Hence, the data became very portable and can be shared across. So, in my early days of implementing system, we were very excited that we could do this. But then we were reminded of something. There's a 1952 act, it's called the Poison Act law, which says that any prescription which is done by the physician, by the consultant, has to stay within the physical building where it is written. It cannot leave the physical building. So until now, I mean, my point here is this. Within my 5 P's just now, the last P is actually the policymakers, patients, providers, payers, and finally policymakers. So it's extremely important that policymakers put in the right policy framework in place and provide the clarity to all the other entities on how to use the policy in place, failing which the industry will not move. Which is why currently, our current health minister, we have a very good health minister with a very clear direction, with a good team in fact, which really wants to advance the industry and wants to bring in technology like AWS cloud technology, so that our country's healthcare will actually prosper and hopefully we'll be able to save more cancer patients.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, can I just add on to that? And in fact, sometimes the regulators become operators themselves.
Yes,
So sometimes they may mandate that, no, you must send all this data up to us, we will take care of it, and we will be the custodians.
That's what we're coming.
And that's in some countries. Okay, so Singapore has NEHR, for whatever you want to say about it. Indonesia has Satu Sehat, right, where they're trying to consolidate up. Now, if you ask me, it's probably a good thing because it makes it very clear that the data flows up to the government and they will be the custodians of it. So there's no, you don't need to worry about the security as an operator, right? Like if I'm a clinic, then I set up already, okay, is you, then the other person that accesses it, okay, you administrate that, and actually we expect them to do a fantastic job because they've done a lot of deep thinking around this. But I think it's important also to understand that sometimes it may need a very big organization with the right regulatory power in order to move things forward a little bit for the various reasons that we have touched upon.
Excellent. So with that, thank you so much for listening to us. Hopefully it's useful, beneficial. And thank you so much for
We have
Oh yeah, questions.
Yeah, questions.
Yeah, we already had one, but yeah,
questions.
more questions are
So
welcome.
I think we can get like 1 or 2 questions. Does anyone wanted to ask any questions to our panel speakers?
Sir.
let's assume that we put ethical consideration aside now. Okay, for the AWS systems, since it's used by a lot of countries, which means it has a lot of data inside the system. Correct me if I'm wrong. So with that system plus AI or like generative AI, can it help in two conditions? First, help the doctor to diagnose a patient where it show a lot of symptoms, but the doctor find it hard to get the core disease. I mean, it's quite common in hospital.
Okay.
And second, for the case like myself, where I have to relapse after the bone marrow transplant and relapse again, and now the professor, I mean, my uncle is professor of hematology. He told me your case is so rare, and the doctor need to use his gut feeling to make decision. So my question is, if the data everything is gathered, and if possible, digitize the old data in UpCare,
Right.
can it help in these two situations for the doctor to make decisions?
Thank you. So, did you hear the question around the back? Yeah, you can hear. Thank you. Sorry, I wanted to make sure everybody is aware. So, two parts to the question, two parts or a few parts to my answer. The first is that we do not access our customers' data. It's a big no-no. You sure get fired and sued and everything. So we do not. So it's not a case of we consolidate everybody's data. Oh, then we see how we can use it. We do not access. We do not administrate our customers' data. So I just want to be super clear. We spent many years establishing this. We do not access. We do not administrate our customers' data. Okay. So so AWS cannot help with that because we cannot access our customers' data. It's not right. It's not right. But if you consider large data sets and how they can help, okay? So our customers, usually they will have their own data sets, whether they collaborate with an academic institution or whether with a hospital or government or whatever. They got the data set by themselves. They're going to use that. They can help with pattern recognition. So there's a lot of work going on with regards to diagnostic co-pilots. Online, you will see symptom checkers, okay? Some of the symptom checkers I probably worked on myself, but you get the symptom checkers. And by and large, a lot of what we have heard, and my personal experience, so not AWS, but my personal experience has been, the very complicated rare diseases, they're actually better than humans at. But they tend to fare much worse for the common things. So what we like to say, I like to joke, the number one hardest diagnosis that you can make on a chest X-ray is normal. Because there's so many things that can be wrong with that. So for the rare diseases, the AI systems tend to do a bit better than doctors, but I don't like to frame it as AI is better than the doctor. What it should be is that the AI can partner with the doctor. They can work together to be both better. Why not? Right? Better together. Okay? That's the first thing. The second thing, and I'm sorry to hear about your condition, but if it's something that has very little precedent, it's unlikely that AI or generative AI can help that much. The reason why is because generative AI is trained using existing data. So if there's no existing data for that, it's unlikely to come up with anything really great. Does that make sense?
I get your point, but because the doctor is keying the data and sent to the system.
Yep.
So normally the doctor needs journal to publish, and then they know what is the latest treatment, which it might took after a success treatment to journal publish. It might be 1
years.
2 years.
No,
it's
more
longer
than that.
More than that.
Yeah, the average time from bench, okay, so let's say somebody got bright idea, bench to bedside, bench to give to patient is, last time it used to be 15 years, after COVID more like 12, and it may come down a little bit more. But So
So because the management data is still key into the system, the what is the outcome is still key in the system. So I mean, if there is possible of collecting this data and without waiting for the publication of journal, the doctor can use it only from here. I mean, they are much more faster accessing to the latest.
I agree with you, but there are some considerations around that. Number one, data sharing, which we
Yes.
spoke about. Okay, so but assuming that your data sharing is sorted, right? Assuming we live in an ideal world and the data sharing is sorted out, you can do that because for edge cases where look, I don't have a study on this, right? This one thing, right? But there are 1 or 2 case report and there's some data around it. It's probably justifiable to talk to the patient to say, listen, we don't have big 1,000 people study, but based on this looks like it worked better than this other option. I cannot give you the numbers, like I said, I cannot give you 5% better or 10% better. It just, broadly speaking, it looks like it. I think that information is very useful to pull into a patient conversation to make a shared decision. Because at that point in time, it's not very clear. And to be fair, I think all patients should be involved in their own healthcare decisions. So you can say, listen, I've really done my best. This is all the data that we have, and I share it with you. And then you can make your own informed choice. And it will improve that informed consent or informed decision-making process. I do agree with you on that.
Okay, so that was a little bit longer than expected.
Sorry.
But it's okay. I think I can have one more question if anyone have any questions regarding this parent discussion. No?
Or anything on AI. Also.
So if let's say a hospital wants to implement the cloud server on its system, so the database is already very large, their database is quite large. So how long it will take for them to implement the cloud server? How long it takes for the onboarding process?
I think we have somebody who has a lot of actual experience, and I can give you the theoretical one.
So basically your question is, how do you migrate the data already within the hospital, a large set of it, into the cloud?
Yes.
As a
And how
very
long
important
does it
question,
take?
I'll actually answer operationally first, strategy point of view first. Of course, if you ask him, he will say, migrate everything. you can do that, it's not wrong. But the thing is, you don't have to do that actually. Now, by law, you need to have 7 years of data online, operationally. That means if you go to a system, you search for patient, that patient data has to come up at least the last 7 years. So that's the first cutoff point. If you have 20 years of data, you don't have to put all the 20 years of data on the cloud. You can, but number one, cost is there. It is expensive, both to migrate and to store and to keep and so on, right? That's number one. Now, number two is that, now, in Malaysia especially, right, I'm talking especially about Malaysia, you got to be careful when you use the cloud, right? Because when you say cloud, you are dependent on the internet access as well. So depending where you are, without pinpointing a particular bad area, if you're in Kota Baru, Kelantan, no offense, you will have some connectivity difficulty. So it's not the best choice to 100% depend on the cloud, right? So it's good to play both. Have some on-prem, have some on the cloud. Maybe you want to use cloud as a backup, as a DRC, disaster recovery center, and so on and so forth, right? But I would say migrate the last 7 years of data. There's various technologies which is can do so, which Dennis can explain.
So I think at the end of the day, I'm not really here to tell you 100% everybody go on the cloud. Really, on the cloud is a use by use basis, right? You need to understand your use case, and really only where it adds value, then you should seriously consider it. Okay, and we're happy to have that conversation. But when you look at data storage, there are different types of data storage that we offer. There's S3 buckets, which are simple storage solution, which is very readily available, and the pricing will be a little bit more because it's more available, right? It's like your 7-Eleven price versus your Lotus price, perhaps. Okay. Then we have very long-term archival storage. So Glacier is the name of that. That's to be much cheaper because it's not so available. You want to retrieve, it takes longer to retrieve, but it's okay, right? Because operationally you don't need that after the 7-year cutoff. So it's kind of a backup storage. Now, there are some advantages to storing it on AWS because usually we have more than one data center in a region. So if one goes down, your data is still there. Singapore, we're super spot. Almost everybody goes, why I need disaster recovery? Internet always work, more or less. You know, electricity very stable, no earthquake, no fire. But hey, you go to San Francisco, riot lah, fire lah, theft lah, flood lah, earthquake. Okay, so there's DRC. Okay, then there's the actual how do you get the data from here now onto the cloud, right? There are various ways to do that. You can do that via the internet in some regions, and I need to check whether it's available for Malaysia. We can truck down the a portable machine. Essentially, it's a little server, mini server. Plug it in, copy over, then we bring it over to our data center and upload it there. So
Actual truck.
Is an actual truck.
comes
Is
to
an
the
actual truck.
hospital,
No.
pick up the data and go back to the cloud.
Yeah, the AWS
It
truck.
works.
Yeah. So because you see, at the end of the day, by and large, AWS likes to give our customers choice. We don't like to lock our customers into one particular solution or service so much. So you want to do on internet, sure, we can give you all the tools and there's all that kind of thing. But you know, very leceh, okay, or maybe internet may be a bit patchy, or you're a bit worried, then we can truck it up for you. I know it sounds a bit old-fashioned, like fax machine,
But
but
it's practical.
it works. But it works, right? And we understand that not everybody has the same circumstances, and we want to be as accessible as possible. Yeah.
Okay, so that's I think gonna be it for this discussion. If you have any more questions, feel free to just grab them to the side and ask them personally. But for now, let's just give them a round of applause again. We also have tokens of appreciation for each of the speakers. So, yeah, yes.
Oh, but by the way, other than data, the services are very fast. So within like seconds, okay? So I forgot to mention that. Suddenly my boss called me, hey, what are you talking about? Yeah, see, that's right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Oh, okay.
Shall I follow this?
Okay, thank you so much.
So we'll be moving on to the next speaker, which is Mr. Jonathan Teo. He is the founder and CEO of Calcis, or Kenanga and Living Silver Impact Scheme. His talk will be in regards to harnessing the power of capital markets to help senior battling cancer find their treatment and recovery. So please give a round of applause to
I'm Jonathan Teo, founder and CEO of Calcis Services, and I'd like to share with you a story of Malaysia. I think, as you all know, Malaysia faces a multiple crisis on many fronts. The first of which is that with EPF data, we know that many seniors may have less than adequate retirement savings for the years ahead. No matter where you cut it, across ethnic or income bands, there's not enough for people to live on in the retirement. And this is a very worrying fact, especially that this data is capturing just only EPF contributors and could potentially are not capturing seniors that are outside of the system. The other thing that worries us immensely is that presently, seniors make up one third of people diagnosed with cancer annually, and this figure is likely to double to 43,000 by 2040. I think what scares us most is that when this happens, a lot of seniors that we see and that we can see on systems just don't have the insurance. Presently, if you are looking at people within the age group of 60 to 69, there's a very likely chance that 80% of them would not be having any form of insurance. And that figure goes up to 90% and over for cases over 70. So this is very worrying, especially when cancer hits. And we see there are very limited options for seniors to finance their healthcare, especially for cancer, which requires a significant amounts of money. One of them could be, for example, personal loans. Seniors, by the fact that they are above a certain age and are not likely to be working, would be excluded from obtaining personal loans. Their adult children could potentially help, but could face hurdles if they have existing financial constraints due to debt service ratios. Another option could be, what if I have cancer and I sell the home and rent for life? That may make sense for others, but the fact is that you have uncertainty of tenure in your twilight years. The landlord could just sell the home and say, okay, you've got to find another place to move, and you could be very much older and may not be in such a great position to move. And there's a very real danger of potentially outliving your savings in doing so. Reverse mortgages exist in Malaysia, where people could borrow on the home value and that's typically repaid upon a person's passing. But we find that in Malaysia, reverse mortgages are inherently costly due to very hefty transaction expenses, and we don't like the fact that we are in a high interest rate environment presently, so debt accrues with interest over time, and the loan is typically then repaid via a property auction, which doesn't really fetch the best possible price when the borrower passes on. So what we did was that we, together with Kanaga Investors Berhad, created what is a reverse annuity scheme to help seniors to unlock wealth from their biggest assets, their homes, to fund their healthcare. And this is something where it's a capital markets innovation which is driven by the private market based on a willing buyer, willing seller concept. And we are funded by institutional investors seeking to do good and do well at the same time, with Kanaga Investors Berhad leading the charge. What they're investing for is to help seniors to access the cancer treatments, to fund it, so that we collectively can help close the cancer care gap. How we do it is that I'll take you through the process of how CALSIS works. Via a fictional senior, whom we do not know of, she's called Sabrina, but let's just say she needs 150,000 ringgit for her treatment. So she and her husband could consider CALSIS to preserve their personal savings. And what they do is that CALSIS purchases their home at a market value of 1.5 million, and that market value is determined by an independent professional valuation, and we will provide that valuation to the seniors for transparency. We buy the home title, but the seniors can get to stay in the home for life. That's the key thing. And what happens is that concurrently, we make payouts. So in the first year, we make a 10% lump sum payout for your healthcare needs. So that goes into their bank account, and it's up to them to do what they need with it. But it's based on 10% of the home's sale price. subsequently in year 2, you may need additional funds for your healthcare. So therefore we make a lump sum payment based on 4% of the home sale price, which translates to 60,000 ringgit. But let's just say you're very lucky and you do not need to go to the hospital anymore. That's great. Then we take that 60,000, divide it across 12 months, and that becomes 5,000 a month, monthly annuities. At that same time, when you sell the home, the seniors nominate a person to receive a portion of proceeds, from when the home is sold, if they were to pass on earlier than 10 years. The reason why we do it is because we have a lot of feedback from people saying, what if I pass away in 5 years? Doesn't sound very expensive, because I have sold you a 1.5 million ringgit home, but I only got a fraction of it, in a very short while. So I'll address that in my next slide, but suffice to say that we will give back a portion of the proceeds if that happens within 10 years. And the scheme ends when both of the seniors pass on. So meaning to say that if one senior passes on, the scheme continues with the remaining senior, and they can still stay in the home and receive the money until they pass on. So the scheme ends when both parties pass on. So on expiration of the scheme, when the seniors are passed on, we will grant the nominee the right to access the home to retrieve any sentimental item, and once that's done, we will use our best endeavors to sell the home, on the open market. Now, when we sell the home, we'll pay the nominee a part of that apportioned proceeds. So like I said, it runs from year 2 to year 10. So meaning to say that if both seniors have passed on, this nominee will receive 72% of the home's sale price when we bought the home then. And it continues on a sliding scale from year 2 all the way to year 10. So even at year 10, 40% of 1.5 million is quite a significant amount of money. But beyond that, there's no more of this, because we start to bear the longevity risk, because we and our institutional investors are committed to funding this up to the last person's up to the last surviving person, and that person could be living up to, say, 100 years old. We still would be funding that. And what happens is that if the sale of the proceeds is less than what we paid for, then we will prorate it. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is help seniors, eligible seniors that own their home, that are 65 years and over, and that includes the spouse or partner, and where they are currently undergoing for treatment and have a home that they want to monetize. And the home, we're starting out with freehold and landed homes located in Klang Valley that are occupied by the owner as the primary place of residence. We don't serve people who have got multiple properties and say, Jonathan, can you help with my investment property, monetize it now? It's better for them to sell it on the open market than to come to us for that. So we're here to help seniors with only one home that need the cash immediately for their cancer care. And these are homes that are typically fully paid for and free from all encumbrances, and not built on a Malay reserve land, or is a low cost, medium cost, affordable home, or a Bumi Putra designated unit, because by law, corporates cannot purchase these properties. And there has to be valid CCC or CF on it and meets our evaluation criteria. But generally, this is the reason why we chose this is because this is the most vulnerable group of all your cancer patients, because the fact they don't have income and they don't have various means of financing. So CALCIS comes as an alternative option for them to consider. And what it does is that it aims to provide an immediate lump sum payout for healthcare needs in year 1. What we're talking about is the speed of this, where we can put, upon consideration and signatures, we can get the money to them within a month. That's substantially fast, considering what options they have. And from year 2 onwards, we have monthly lifetime annuities for living expenses. And without having, and this is so important, you can still age in place. You don't change your address. You still stay in the comfort of your home and the familiarity of your communities. And layering upon that are all these complementary services that we fund, including basic home repairs to address electrical, plumbing, roofing issues, basic pest control, and we even provide selected fire safety devices to help to mitigate potential fire risks. And we put in home insurance for the other things that we cannot foresee. And lastly, we cover the quit rent and assessment rate. So this actually helps seniors materially where they are to help ensure that they have a good retirement ahead. All these is actually Asia's first with innovation and impact at its core. And it's built around a very proven model in Europe called the French viager. It's a transaction between a willing buyer and a willing seller, where the willing buyer is typically a middle-aged person that's looking for a future space for retirement, and the willing seller is a typically older person which wants more cash for their living expenses. And this is typically what you call a peer-to-peer transaction. So it's willing buyer, willing seller with the intermediary of a lawyer. So what they do is they sell the home to this buyer, and in return the buyer pays for down payment and promises monthly annuities until the seller passes on, whilst the seller stays in their home for life. And this is something that has been around for 1,000 years in Europe. And we look at it statistically, there's about over 5,500 transactions annually, with about which represent about 1% of the residential real estate market. And what's interesting are the sort of returns we're seeing that are about 300 basis points above the 10-year fixed income for France. What's interesting though is that we're seeing the entry of institutional investors with large pools of capital that collectively help to mutualize longevity risks. Why I say that is because from an individual perspective, you don't know how long a person's going to live. You're going to keep paying the money until they pass on. So it could be less if they pass on earlier. It could be more if they live longer than you've anticipated. But when you put it together, when you mutualize it with hundreds of homes under portfolio, you can be very certain of a property sale every year. And these are the sort of figures of various funds across Europe that have implemented this, and these are the returns. And what we've done effectively is to localize this together with Kanaga Investors Berhad. So this is a capital markets product. It's highly regulated, and that's why we had to work very closely with them. That we are the innovation and administrative partner. That we built this out of Singapore, but we are localizing it to fit Malaysian laws, regulations, and context. So in the sense that Kanaga Investors Berhad acts as the investment manager that manages the funds of investors that invest into this scheme, and we are the administrator. We deal with the customers that come to us to take them through that journey and with them and work with them throughout their lives to help them get better and lead a better retirement. Of course, then we have the SPV, which is the transacting entity, and for an enhanced corporate governance, Tenaga Trustees Berhad custodizes the home titles. So effectively, what happens is that this is the structure that we have built for Malaysia, and effectively, we call for funds from the investors on an annual basis to fund the down payments and annuities for the seniors. And at the end of the day, we have set sufficient funding for the first 10-15 homes, with Kanaga Investors Berhad leading in charge on this. So we hope that with this innovation, it gives seniors battling cancer another option to consider, in funding their treatment, where there may be very few options on the table. In my last slide, this is something which I'll ask of you. We are very new here. This is Asia's first impact, this healthcare and retirement financing scheme for this region. It is probably one of the first globally, specifically for cancer care financing. So we need help to create awareness about this. And this is where we like to, for every one of you who have a LinkedIn account, who have a Facebook account, please forward on Kelsis to your friends, to your parents and your friends, because maybe one of them would need this and are financially struggling in their journey of cancer. Please also follow us on LinkedIn to journey with us on all the stories that we will create in Malaysia together in creating a better outcome for our seniors and their families. Thank you.
So now I'm going to open the floor to any questions. Yes?
Yeah, so good morning. Thank you for the presentation. Now, your slide mentioned that, initially there's a 10% payout on the market value of the property. Yeah. So what if you say the cash required, is actually more than 10%? So is there any adjustment to that, or is it 10% fixed?
So in the sense that what we always tell people is that if there are, in this slide over here, we state very clearly upfront that additional personal funds may be required if healthcare costs exceed the lump sum amount.
So that means in other words, 10%.
So it means, say that if your healthcare costs exceed the 150,000 that CalSys pays out, then the seller would have to top up using their personal funds.
So I guess you sort of indirectly, you're still answering the question, so it's 10%, isn't it?
Yes.
You're paying at 10%.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions regarding stocks? Any other questions? I think that's about it. If you have any other questions regarding Jonathan CEO's talk this morning, then you can find him and talk to him privately. So I think that concludes our session for today. We will have another session at around 11, so please join us for then.